Well, welcome back. We are in week 2 of Truth in Every Story, our At the Movies companion podcast. We're super excited that you're checking back in, coming back. If you were here yesterday, you know that Air was our movie of the week. Air was a movie. Shane brought a great message on Air, and I'm going to throw it to somebody in a minute to give you a recap in case you weren't here in person for that or in case you haven't seen the movie. But I want to introduce our guests first. So I want to go over here first. This is Tori. Tori, thank you for being on this podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You're going to be in a couple of them, but this is your first time. We're really excited for this. And then we've also got Key back. Welcome back for episode 2. We're so glad you're here. And our guest, our special guest, really special.
Appreciate that.
So much so that he needed to introduce himself. But here you go. Who are you?
Who am I and why am I here,
and
right?
Why are you here?
I'm here because I'm an expert in air. That's why I'm here.
In air.
But what's your
there
name?
You go.
Right.
But
Yes.
what's your name?
Oh, I'm Lee, and I'm just glad to be here.
I'm Lee, and I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah,
I love it. That's great. Lee, thanks for being here and taking your time to talk about this. So we're going to be talking about Air. So you are the one who knows the movie the best. So I'm going to ask you, before we get into a very quick debate, a very common debate that happens all the time. You guys probably know the debate. But first, give us just like a 1-minute recap of what Air is about. What's the whole movie, the whole thing?
And it's one of those movies that's a little off the grid, so which I kind of like, and a lot of us do, right? It's that movie that not everybody went and saw, and it kind of slides in. And so if you haven't seen it, it's probably worth, there's nothing blows up, there's no bombs, there's none of that. It's very much just a drama, dialogue, a lot of intense human interaction. But basically, the premise of the movie is around Nike. Back when Michael Jordan was emerging from North Carolina, was about to be drafted by the NBA, and part of that whole deal still today is the idea of, what shoe do you wear, what brand do you sign with, all of those, because they become the rep. What's interesting about the movie is he was not Michael Jordan at that time. He had some success in college.
He wasn't even really in the movie, is what you said. This
He
isn't
also
Space
is not,
Jam.
yeah.
This isn't Space Jam.
It is not
Michael
Space
Jordan had a
Jam.
lot
Or
of
Space
time.
Jam too.
He didn't have any time in that, but
he is that's so interesting, Rob, you say that, because he is the key figure in the movie, and he only appears in the movie in the last third, and they never show his face because it's not him, it's an actor playing a young Michael Jordan. And so it's really the people around him that are part of it, that are making decisions largely for him. Obviously, he's a decision maker, but his parents are deep in the movie, and we're introduced to an agent named Sonny Vaccaro, who at that time was very well known, who would go to these camps, sign high school, college players to these brands, help steer them to certain colleges. And so now with NIL, if you know what that is, all this stuff, it kind of came out of this idea of, are you paying players? So now players never made any money until they went pro. Now they make money in college and all that. But at the time Michael Jordan emerged, he was thought to be a really good NBA player. No one had any clue, except for maybe Sonny Vaccaro, of what he was going to end up doing.
And his mom.
And
Michael
his
Jordan's mom understood
she
it.
believed in
she
him,
got
for
it.
sure. We'll get to that.
She got it.
She got that.
I actually, shoes are an important deal. Like in both in basketball culture, but in culture in general. I remember, I never even played basketball, but I remember the style of shoe I had in high school. It was the D Rose 3s, and they were Adidas. So I wasn't a Nike guy back then, but I wore the D Rose 3s. It was a whole thing. My brother played, and I was like, I got to have cool shoes because my brother plays basketball.
Now everybody has their shoe, right?
Everybody has their shoe. Zion has his shoe. LeBron's got his shoe. Speaking of LeBron, the classic debate.
There it is.
We're gonna ask it. Who's the GOAT, the greatest of all time? What's your opinion on it? Is it LeBron or is it Jordan?
So I'm not like angsty about it. Like some people that will not be named that we both know, they get pretty passionate to the point of blows around this conversation. I just think it's tough to deny that Michael Jordan is Michael Jordan. Like he is a brand. LeBron is also obviously very well known, has accomplished a tremendous amount. It's an unfair argument. They're both incredible. But at the end of the day, I think what puts Michael, the fact that we're talking about a movie that features him is a bit of
doesn't
that.
even feature
it
him.
Doesn't even feature him, but features part of his story. I just think he elevated the game. He changed the game. LeBron didn't do that. He sort of came off of the Michael, Magic, Larry Bird thing and took it to the next level. But nobody's ever going to be ever going to be Michael Jordan. I don't think.
Is that only because you lived through his career?
Maybe. I think I lived through LeBron as well, and so
That's
I
fair.
think I admire LeBron, and he accomplished a lot. The other thing that LeBron did, that he had to move around a lot to win championships. And now we're getting into the weeds a little bit, ladies. Michael just went to Chicago. They were not good. They got better and better, and he won 7 championships, I believe. LeBron, he had to jump and go here and go there.
He had to have the right team around him, too.
Yeah, he did.
When you talk about the Heat when he played, we're talking about the big three. We're not just talking about LeBron.
Yeah.
You got Wade and you got Bosh with him.
Yeah, if you watch the Netflix series, and we got to move on, but you watch the Netflix series about the Bulls. Obviously, Michael Jordan did not win those championships
For sure.
alone.
Yep.
But I think it did differentiate him that he landed there, he stayed there. They built a number of teams and different fruitions of those teams around him. So, again, I'm not coming to blows with anybody. But
in your
I would
humble
argue,
opinion.
in my humble but right opinion, Mike, if you're asking who the GOAT is, it's Jordan.
It's Jordan. Okay. That
Can
makes
the girls
sense.
weigh in?
You can if you'd like.
All
yeah.
right, because I would definitely say it's Jordan just on lack of flopping alone.
Oh, wow. She
That's
just
a
went
whole
into-
controversial topic in and of
wow.
itself. We're going to go off of this,
whining.
and we're going to have a whole
And
podcast
whining.
Yeah, and whining,
on
so.
flopping and the state of the NBA currently. No, but I think one of the things that we can all come to terms with when we talk about Michael, we talk about LeBron, we talk about Air in general. One of the things is the idea of playing it safe. And I think when you think about a lot of these stars, LeBron and Michael included, they didn't play it safe. So one of the things you admire, I think, about Michael is that he kind of changed the game when he came in. He started playing differently. The guys around him started playing differently because of him. Not because he was timid, not because he was shy. He legitimately just was like, no, this is what I have to offer. I'm going to offer it, and I'm going to get us there. Whereas one of your arguments against LeBron is a little bit of like, okay, but he's just playing in the culture that he has, and like he's playing in what Michael created, but he still doesn't play it safe. He's not playing it safe. And so neither did Nike with Air. When we'll get into that in a minute. But I want to talk about this idea of playing it safe. And I think it's probably safe to say that as Christians, our job is not to play it safe. And I think our job is to risk a little bit, because I think the risk that we're going towards a certain reward is a lot bigger reward than just a shoe deal or a championship ring. So let's talk about that a little bit. Do you guys feel like in your life do you feel like you've been playing it safe, or do you feel like you are pretty confident to say like, no, I'm risking it. I'm going forward. And if so, what are we truly risking it for? Like, why should we be risking it?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that comes out in this movie that has been an undertone of a lot of conversations with people that I've been having lately is this idea of comfort, which I think kind of runs parallel with safety, right? When we seek safety, we're seeking a level of security and comfort. And I think, unfortunately, there's been a level at which sometimes inadvertently, when we talk about the gospel and what Jesus does in our lives, there's sort of the idea of if you come to Jesus, everything will be fine. But we don't really define fine, right? Where we understand that life brings, whether it be suffering, challenges, or opportunities. I think that more and more what I'm discovering in my own life, and I think the people that we influence, is that safety is not the goal, right? Comfort's not the goal. That when we actually begin to follow Christ, if you read Scripture, I mean, Rob, you got your Bible laid out in front of you. I mean, if you read Scripture, there's not a lot of comfort in Scripture.
Right.
And so I don't know where that came from, where we feel like, do these 3 things, show up on Sundays, do that, and you're going to be comfortable. I'm not sure God cares about that much. And I think that what's interesting about this movie is that you see people at different points in the movie and different characters all having to come face to face with what I would call what they're comfortable with. Like Phil Knight in the movie, he's the CEO of Nike, and they bring this deal to him that's it's like a crazy deal, and he has to be comfortable going, I'm basically going to risk my company's future on this kid that's coming out of North Carolina that's going to play in the NBA, literally. And so over and over again in the movie, if you watch it, you'll see guys being called out of comfort.
That's good. I like that. I like the idea of risk. And I want to ask you guys this question. When we think about risk in our Christian life, what are we risking when we step out of that comfort and we're bold and not playing it safe with our faith?
Yeah.
So I imagine like when we share our faith, or when we bring people to church, or we have a Bible open on the coffee table and somebody's at our house going, oh, what is that? Do we go, oh, it's a book, and we flip it closed? Or do we say like, no, this is what I'm learning?
Yeah.
When you think of risk, what are the things that are at risk? when we live out our faith boldly. Definitely.
I would think, for me, I would say definitely like you're risking relationships. People could look at you differently and judge you. But I'm going to call out my favorite verse. Casually tattooed right there is Isaiah.
I'm judging your tattoo right now.
Oh, you should. It's very controversial, but Isaiah 7:9 says, if you don't stand firm in your faith, you won't stand at all. So that to me is a constant reminder that even though I go through life and we live in Las Vegas, which a lot of people have their own opinions of church culture in general, just being confident and bold in who we are. Like, we're called to do that by Christ. We're called to stand firm in our faith regardless of judgment from others, because the judgment from others is not what's going to get us into heaven. And I think that's a really important thing to keep centered in our mind.
That's good. Yeah. So it's the relationships and the relational status that you have with other people.
Yeah.
Tori, do you feel like there's anything else that like we are putting at risk, or that's a good summary of kind of what we are putting at risk?
I mean, I think relationships is probably the most impactful, but I think for some people it can be things as practical as even livelihood, as job, as like if you're a teacher and you want to pray or you want to talk about Jesus with your kids, like that's a tension. And figuring out how to be courageous and bold and live out your faith. I think sometimes as those of us who work at a church, this is just what we do. Our conversations are so natural and so familiar that it can almost be something that we forget that those of you who are watching are engaging with every day. It's a tension that you're living with your boss and what to say and what not to say, with a client, with a parent, so I think it's relational, but I think that there's also some practical ramifications that are potential.
That's good. I'll be vulnerable here and talk about my story just from a couple of years ago. My wife and I got to a point where we sat down and we were thinking about our friend group and all the people that we have around us, and we realized we were like, man, we've really built up this like everybody's Christian around us. Like we've surrounded ourselves with people who believe the same things, who are following Jesus, who we can have these conversations with. And we had this moment of like, that's not what Jesus is calling us to do. Right. And we had to actively make a choice not to play it safe anymore and say, okay, so where's our mission field then? Like, who are the people that we're actually interacting with, that we're pushing the gospel forward and that we're trying to bring into a relationship with Jesus?
I think that's awesome too, because I think as we saw in the movie and what you guys just referenced, it really does come down to conviction, right? So you just described a moment of conviction. But conviction also leads to action. So I think sometimes when we see people playing it safe, it's because they either don't have strong convictions or they're ignoring or avoiding those convictions. And I think in the movie, one of the things that comes out that you just referenced is the idea of like at different points, people had to go, do I have a deep enough conviction that I'm going to step courageously into the next decision or the next conversation? I mean, it's just peppered throughout the movie. Definitely. Obviously not from a spiritual perspective, but the same thing applies, right? I don't think it's just about like, I'm going to be bold in my faith. I think there's more regular convictions that we need to have around, life choices, how we're going. I mean, I think being a follower of Christ comes down to convictions around, finances and generosity and relationships that you just mentioned. There's so many things that aren't just about, I'm going to share my faith. Yeah. That's a conviction, but I think that's just a part of the bigger picture.
That's really good. That's great. I want to take us back to a line that Shane had in the message. He asked this question, and it's cool because I think most of these speakers in the series have been bringing it down to like one question that they're asking us to ponder. And his was, where are you overlooking potential? So he says, where are you overlooking potential? Is it your kids, coworkers, someone in your small group? Because I think what this movie talks about a lot is potential for such a big thing, and people were overlooking it. And as we were talking off air,
what you did there.
Yep. We were talking about how the missed potential was what could be done in the shoe game. Everybody was just doing the basic thing like, hey, we'll pay you, wear our shoes. But Nike went to Jordan and said, hey, we want you to design a shoe. They saw the potential of what could be, and that was being missed by everybody else. So I think we can sit around and we miss the potential in other people. But I wanted to ask us and dive a little deeper into this potential idea, and I wanted to bring us to a chunk in James. It's James 2, and it's talking about favoritism. And James is saying, ultimately he's saying to the church, like, why do when people come into your space, you say, oh, you have gold on, you have a lot of jewelry, here, come sit up front. And then they see somebody else come in who doesn't have the jewelry, and they say, here's a seat for you over here. And they're distinguishing based on this favoritism of what culture would say are these people. So I think when we think about this potential, do you feel like we miss people's potential because we prejudge them without knowing them?
Absolutely. I think it's an unconscious bias. It doesn't mean that it's something that you're doing intentionally. I think we live in a culture where we categorize people by all kinds of things. I mean, we categorize them by, discs. We categorize them by Enneagram number. We categorize them
by the car they drive, too.
We categorize
right?
them by the car they drive.
EV, baby.
Yeah.
I'm driving around in my Kia Rio.
Exactly. No, we do. You're right. You call it categorize, right? And I think that's an appropriate word because we do it without even thinking about it.
Exactly. Like we don't mean it. No. And I think ultimately, if you talk to most people, there is not a malicious intent on how you're addressing someone or maybe how you're excluding someone. It's just a little bit of how in this broken, fallen world, we're wired to a small degree, and it's not what God intended for us. And it's not how he sees each other.
We're using the word potential, because when I hear the word potential, it speaks to what we don't know yet or see, right? So when you just read that passage, their favoritism was based on what they knew, right? Someone that was wearing the right shoes or whatever, right? It's like, I'm going to now position them. Where the word potential itself really speaks to what is it about this person that we've yet to discover that is within them. And so it means that we have to fight really hard to open up the opportunity for that potential to be fully reached.
That's good.
And I also think that when it comes to potential, people are really good at seeing someone and narrowing their potential based on their own specific need of what they need out of them. So let's say let's say one of your kids is like really artistic, but you want them to follow you in the family business, and that's just not how they're wired. But that's what you see in their potential. You see the potential of what's going to happen to the business if they don't. You see the potential. You don't see any potential in their artistic ability. You only see their potential in how they can serve you, not in how God wired them to serve others.
That's good. I like that. So I want to ask you guys all, as Christ followers, what are some practical things that we do that can help us both see the potential, but also break down any barriers that are keeping us from seeing potential of people? Are there practical daily steps that we can do? Like, I imagine, and I'm going to ask this legitimately because I don't know if I have an answer for it right away, but like, if I wake up tomorrow, what should I be doing so that I can see the potential in the person who's serving me my Starbucks drink, or the kid that walks in here on a Wednesday night at a Crossing student event? What should I be doing personally to make sure that I'm breaking down those walls that are blocking the potential I see in people?
That's good. I would say, and this obviously isn't something that's just going to happen overnight, but to be able to look at someone, not for the way that for the job that they have, the car they drive, for the things that are associated with them, but for the character that they have and for who they are and for the gifts that God has instilled within them, because each person has their own thing that makes them tick, their own thing that is their passion, is their purpose, the reason that God designed them to be here to serve and better this world for the kingdom, whether they are a believer or not.
That's good.
And being able to look at people in that way, which again, like I said, it's not happening overnight.
Yeah.
We're not going to wake up and be like, got it, you have this gift and I see your calling.
Yeah.
But I think that is a great way to start, it's a good stepping stone at least.
That's good. And one of the things I'm hearing you say is that it comes with having a relationship with somebody.
Yeah.
We can't automatically make a judgment, and as soon as we see them, I need to get to know who you are
Right.
and understand your story and see where you're coming from as well.
Right. And that goes back to like people deeply want to be known.
To be known, yeah.
I mean, look on social media, people want so badly. Everyone wants to be an influencer or have that gold stamp of approval from all of their followers and all the likes that they get. But we need to be able to see those people beyond the screens, beyond the little rectangles that we're addicted to,
Yeah.
beyond all of that, and beyond their follower account as well.
That's
and
good.
see what people have to offer beyond all
That's
of
good.
that. Yeah.
That's great.
Kind of building off the relationship thing, I think we need to listen with the intent to learn. Like listening with the intent to really hear what someone is saying and be a safe space for them to be vulnerable. Because I think people don't share what they're feeling about their own potential or maybe their dreams or where God might be calling them, because it's scary to share that out loud with somebody else. And going back to what you were saying with judgment, like, well, how's that going to be received? And sometimes it's the people that are closest to us that are the first ones to discount what God's doing.
Right.
And so I think when we offer someone else the ability to just sit and listen and let them have space to share, then they're able to even start to recognize their own potential. Because I think we've also gotten to a place where we have suffocated the potential God's put in us. We've settled
good.
for places that we weren't meant to settle. We've grown roots in places we were supposed to just pass through.
Yeah.
And we've become, back to your word, Lee, comfortable where we are, instead of seeing the potential that God's like, hey, you're not done yet. Like, yeah, you've had a good run here, but you're not done. Like, I've got a whole nother plan for you. Let's go.
That's really good. I like that. Lee, as we're closing it out, what do you think? Practical advice for how do I break that down? How do I make sure I see
as I'm
it?
listening, it's just like it's all correct, right? And we all are like nodding and we're amening and wow, all those things.
But how do we do it?
Well, and the
That's
reality
question.
is, the culture we live in will work against that for sure, because things like pace and isolation and the social media that all those things. But yeah, I guess I kind of was listening to you guys thinking it's kind of a macro and a micro approach. So, I think there is a macro approach where we walk into the world trying to pay attention to people, trying to, in small ways contribute something to their life, the barista at Starbucks, etc. But I think sometimes when we think that wide, we do nothing. So again, as we've talked about relationship, et cetera, and potential, I think the micro says there are people around us in our community that are friends, family, et cetera, that is where we need to start, right? Like, where are the people that you are the most connected to, that we believe God's connected you to, where there's opportunity for you to see potential in them? In the movie, obviously, it's Michael Jordan's mom, who is the closest to him, who saw the most potential in him. I think people, as the layers moved away from him, they didn't get it as much, or they saw their own benefit from him, versus she was not interested in her own benefit. She was
Which
interested
also
in
kind of
him,
speaks
right?
to longevity.
So that's where I get to where macro, yes, followers of Christ, we should go out in the world, believe in the potential of others, give them grace and mercy, of course. But I think sometimes we can get so wide that we don't get narrow enough to see, okay, who's right in front of us, that we begin to see the potential in them and begin to figure out, as much as it depends on us, how can we be the Michael Jordan's mom of their life and say, hey, I think there's a bigger plan here and a bigger opportunity, and how do we help them find it and get there?
That's great. I love it. So then to close out, I want to bring it back to Shane's line, because his 3 examples were
I thought you were
exactly
going to bring
that.
it back to LeBron and
That
Michael,
too.
like,
That'll be
close
part
out.
2 of the
Right,
closing.
right.
This is the closing of the real content, and then we'll go to that. No, I'm just kidding. But he said, where are you overlooking potential? And his examples were kids, coworkers, and someone in your small group.
There you go.
All 3 of those examples you have a relationship with, you know who they are. So it's going to be, it might be the hardest, but it's the simplest to start doing. It might be the hardest combos because you know them so well. But who are you overlooking? Where can you draw the potential? So to close it out, Lee Coate, if you had to go one-on-one versus LeBron James, and you had 10 minutes, how many points do you think you could score?
Man, that's an amazing question. 10 minutes?
10
That's a
minutes.
long time.
Well, okay, maybe we'll go 5.
No, it's okay. I might need.
Do you
10.
think he's not lasting 10 minutes on the
I
court
might
with
need 10.
LeBron?
He'll tell you he's elite.
I'm elite, but here's the thing. Yeah, I'm not sure I could get a shot off.
Okay, let me make it simpler for you then.
Okay.
Who wins in a golf game, you or Michael Jordan?
It would be close. I think it would be close. I've watched. I've seen. I think we could go at it a little bit. I think that's a great question.
He's
I would
studied
love the
it.
chance.
He's studied it. Hey,
The
Michael
problem
Jordan,
is-
if you're watching this, Lee wants to take
I
you
want a piece
one-on-one
of you.
golf.
The problem is,
Gosh.
my understanding is he plays for large amounts of cash, and so I'm probably out on that game. But yeah,
'Kay.
No, I score nothing against LeBron. I've got a shot against Michael on the
Okay,
golf
do
course.
you do better on a baseball field than Jordan?
No.
No. Okay. Well, there it is. Golf is
It's
his
it.
elite sport,
That's
but on
right.
the basketball court and the baseball field, he's not doing
I don't
anything.
think
Hey,
so.
thank you guys so much for being here. We're super excited. This is only week 2 of 4, so check back for the next 2. I'm not going to spoil the next one for you, but we have an exciting one. Dare I say, a disastrous episode coming up after
That was good.
this.
That was good.
But hey, we'll see you next week.